Okay, okay. Hello, everyone. Let's see if take two is the magic number for getting this live to work. Instagram keeps putting in so many new updates that things change and you don't even realize it. So let's see if we can pull him in this time. And then we will go ahead and get started. There we go.
There
That
we
time
are.
it worked.
Yeah, it
How are you?
always seems to be tech with us, I think.
Gotta love the tech
Yeah,
issues.
yeah, great to see you. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. It's a little bit rainy here in Virginia, so my energy level has been about the rainy level. So I'm trying to muster up as much as energy as I can for the live.
Yeah, yeah. No, same in New York too. Just gray and rainy and all that fun stuff. So
Perfect for a conversation of positivity.
definitely.
Awesome. Well, I will let you introduce yourself for people who might not have seen you on previous episodes and might not be following you, and then we can dive into a conversation.
Yeah. I'm Michael Montoni. I'm currently a postural alignment therapist in New York City. From up here, lived all around the world. Grew up everywhere, was previously in entertainment business for about 20 years. um, Former athlete, personal trainer, you name it, jack of all trades, as they say. So yeah, just we met on during COVID, actually.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I started this series back in 2020 to try to add some positivity to the internet. And I believe this will be your third time on. So I'm excited for today's conversation.
yeah, yeah. Well, I wanted to say, congratulations and thanks again for doing all this work. You've really been consistent with this over the years, and put together some great guests and great episodes. And I think particularly with what the world is going through, it's really important to have those kind of conversations and just having that flow and that kind of energy pouring into the world, just to balance out all the other things that are going on. So again, kudos to you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel like there was so much like going on in my head saying like, man, there's so much negativity. And it just crossed my mind one day, like, well, if you don't like that, then why don't you change it and be one of the people out there adding something positive to the internet? So I've definitely kept it going over the years, and I think that we've had some ups and downs, but I think that we're falling back into something that seems very similar to a lot of the pain points we were experiencing in 2020. We don't have a pandemic going on, but there's still a lot of uncertainty and things that are causing a lot of anxiety, depression, and lots of other things for people. So I wanted to keep these episodes going so that we can dive into conversations that hopefully lift people's spirits as well as give some advice on how they might be able to navigate maybe some of their rough patches they're going through.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a big point too. One of the things that I've kind of noticed more and more recently, is, I go back to always talking about the human condition, and wherever we come from, whatever walk of life we come from. I mean, whether it be your gender, your race, your age, your style of interest, what part of the world you're from, doesn't really matter. Even your, down to your career, family dynamic, nobody's exempt from the human condition, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we're all going through the same basic things. We all feel the same basic pains. We have the same basic joys. And I think that that's a great place to start,
Yeah.
really kind of having some compassion, because I think that, the world, I don't want to say that it's lacking in compassion, because it's very easy. It's very reductive to kind of say that, because when you look around, it's like media is teaching you that everything is bad and alarmist, and everyone everywhere is suffering all the time. But we know from being around each other that that's simply not true. It's just you
Yeah.
have to know where to look, and your focus is going to become a really big part of what you experience. So
Mhm.
I really kind of try to go back to that base in every situation that I'm in, and remember that we're all kind of in the same boat,
Yeah.
whether we want to believe that in the moment or not.
Yeah. I always try to remind people that what you see in the media is not necessarily the world. It's algorithms and them pushing whatever they think is going to get them the most attention because they're a business as well. And I love to give the example of I went hiking during the pandemic and everything was just normal. Like the people I met were just normal, and the like conversations that were going on were just normal conversations. And when it came to seeing that versus what you would assume the world was by viewing it through the lens of social media or the news outlets, it was like this very different uh, thing to be staring at. And when I compared it, I was like, okay, so it's not as scary as it seems. We are still human beings that interact with one another with compassion and showing each other just common respect. And I think sometimes it's really easy for us to forget that the little lens that you're viewing social media through is really people creating stuff that they're like, okay, this will grab people's attention and adding anything that they can make it seem more explosive or more clickable. And that's not always the best for like your mind because you're going to be sucked down this like rabbit hole of extreme words being placed everywhere. And one thing I like to compare, it's like before social media, a lot of times our only avenue for like absorbing this type of information was like the newspaper, magazines, or the TV with the couple news stations that we
Hmm.
had to choose from. Now you can hear a story from like 100 different places and it's just like you're on overdrive. You're hearing the same news, but it's coming at you from so many different angles, being told from so many different perspectives that it just seems like world ending. And I think we have to kind of figure out how to kind of pull ourselves back from all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, overwhelm is a big thing, and that's exactly what you touched on. You know, ever since the news media figured out they went 24 hours, their impetus became not get the news out there. You know, I think it kind of died with Walter Cronkite or something like that, at least in the US.
Yeah.
But it became about get the story out first, doesn't matter if it's right. You know,
Yeah.
rile people up, get papers sold, or get clicks, or get any of those number of attention. Basically, you're grabbing attention. And if we've looked at the social media algorithms, that's really what it's about. They're selling attention.
Yeah.
And, you know, it says a lot if you talk to a lot of the CEOs, a lot of the creators of these platforms, that they don't allow their children to be on them, that they don't use the platforms they themselves created,
Yeah.
you know, and you got to be kind of skeptical or wary of a chef that's not willing to eat their own food,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So you know, they put the tape over their cameras, and not to get sensationalist about it, but just looking at the basic things that they do. Because when you think about people talk about going on social media breaks, for instance, and why do we even need to do that? You know,
Yeah.
so there's we're being bombarded all the time with just information and stimulus, and then you add to that your life. You know, they've done studies where when people come off of the computer, off of social media, and go into the world, they tend to be less sensitive to other people. They tend to be more agitated, more easily, you know, offended, triggered, whatever you want to call it, um, versus people that weren't on there, and then that was the control group that they went with.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you take that into the world, it reminds me of, you know, the cup theory. And I don't remember who originally came up with this, but I love it. And it talks about the fact that you walk around in this world with a cup, and that cup is filled with something. You're gonna get bumped. The world is gonna bump you. Now, whatever spills out of that cup when you get bumped is determined by what you have inside. So if you're carrying around anger, if you're carrying around frustration, if you're carrying around anxiety, that's what's going to spill out of that cup. If you're carrying around peace, if you're carrying around understanding and compassion, self-love, whatever that might be, that's what's going to spill out. And so what's important is we talk about always, you know, pouring from an empty cup, or that analogy seems to be very universal. And so
Yeah.
it's like we have to sort of take ownership and charge over filling that cup with things that we want versus allowing it to be filled with whatever falls into it. And I think that
Yeah.
determines a lot of how we react when, shit hits the fan.
Yeah, I've never heard that analogy before, but I really love that. And there have definitely been people in my life that are like in my close circle where I can kind of tell when they've filled their cup up with a little bit too much of something, and you're like, "Ooh, you're spilling some nasty stuff out of your cup right now. Maybe you need to go and grab something a little healthier to pour into that cup." And I mean, I took a break for 3 months from social media, and there were so many different things that went through my head because I believe we're in this world where people tell you you won't be successful as a business if you don't have social media, you won't be relevant if you don't have followers. And there's so many things that are fed into our minds. And when I jumped off of social media, I didn't think of it as I'm going to lose my success. I looked at it as this is only one very small avenue for me to do the things that I do. And as soon as I shut down my accounts, I was just like, wow, my brain is thinking of a million different ways that I can connect with people, that I can like do my job better. And I think that we've fallen into this hole of thinking that social media and all of this just is the most important thing in our lives, to where even they suggest don't look at your phone super early in the morning because like you don't know what you're going to get. And I found that when I put myself on platforms that were a lot more managed or control, like I own my own platform for my coaching business, and I know what's on there because it's what
Mhm.
I create. It's a space that I create the energy, and then people get to live in that. So I was still connecting with people through a platform, but it wasn't as chaotic and unknown as logging onto Instagram and scrolling, because now it's not even about who you follow. Instagram gets to control you seeing completely different profiles you've never even intended to follow. And I realized that I was waking up in a better mood, and I was just like interested in doing research and going out and saying, okay, this is how I did it online. How do I do it in real life with people at the grocery store?
Yep.
And because they're just as random as the random people you connect with online, it's like, how do I start a conversation? Oh, it's just as easy. Make a comment. It's a connecting conversation starter. But I think with the pandemic, it we were already starting to distance ourselves from one another because we weren't just friends with people we knew in school or were coworkers with. We were starting to become friends with people from other sides of the world, people from other states. But I feel like the pandemic really stretched us out to the point where we were no longer communicating with people in person, and social media and internet platforms were the only way we were connecting. And I think it's kind of warped our mind in the whole human experience of connecting with one another.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the word that you said with connectivity, and that's a huge point of interest in general. Is you said you went out into the world and figured out how you could connect. I mean, for instance, because I love to tell on myself. I was out shooting a pilot this morning for a TV show, and it's rainy and it's cold, and in New York, the trains, it was packed. People were just being rude. I mean, it was just madness. And my New York brain, of course, goes into mode right away. And it's like this guy, that girl, oh, whatever, whatever. And I decided at that moment to choose what I was going to focus on. And I used it to connect with other people. And what was interesting is that we took the experience that we were having, right? Which you don't want to gaslight yourself in this world and tell yourself that the feelings you're having aren't real or that you're not allowed to have them, you're not allowed to feel them. But what I found out is it's not the problem is not our feelings and our sort of emotions and what we're feeling from a general situation. It's our reactions to those things.
Yeah.
We suffer when we react to the pain. We suffer when we react to the situation. And so your focus is going to choose and determine what experience you have, right? So I could feel all these things, and I could feel that frustration well up inside of me, and then the anxiety of, okay, am I going to be on time? Is this going to go right? Because we all have that. I work in these spaces, and yet am a human, and I live these every day, and I have to manage them, right? So what I did at that moment was decided to connect with other human beings, and what happened there was really magical, because this small group of people, suddenly we were all feeling the same thing at the same moment, and the three of us looked very different. We came from different age groups, different demographics, but we were all having the same human condition, and because we were able to connect on that, it made the entire journey joyful, and we found some peace in it. And so when you talk about connectivity, when you talk about social media, the original intent of the platforms was to connect, and what it became was doom scrolling. What it became was compare and contrast, who's doing better or worse than me. And we do that in life too, right? But it just, with the digital side of it, it makes it that much more. And it's also very skewed. It's this very small window, like you said, how somebody else is choosing what goes into that cup. And then we take
Yeah.
that out into the world. And that's dangerous. Like ignorance and emotion are a dangerous combination. And when you only have this very myopic, very blinder sensibility of things on, when you get rattled, well, what it's going to happen? What are you going to do with that? So staying somewhat centered, I think, is very important. And
Yeah.
we can do that again by connecting with one another and by reaching out and, staying in that sort of bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently, because I'm a Disney person, uh, who enjoys Disney content, I have been seeing a lot of the stuff around the Snow White film that's going on. And of course, this is a very like triggering time for people in general. And I think that people's hatred has attached itself to anything and everything that exists. And I think when it came to the content being put out, I was blown away by like how people are spending their so much time hating on a Disney movie that came out. Like I went and saw it even though I heard horrible reviews, and I was like, I'm gonna look at this as just form of entertainment. It's not a political statement. It's not like this big blow up thing that's directed at certain people. I was just like, look, let's look at it from pure entertainment. And I was like scrolling through because the algorithm has said, okay, you love Disney content. We're going to show you everything Disney. My whole feed has blown up with all these hateful videos about Rachel and Disney and the whole movie itself. And I'm just sitting there trying to like get it out of my feed. I'm like, I don't want it if this is what it is. And I posted that I was going to see it, and my inbox filled up with people with just really angry, negative responses. And I was like, instead of jumping back at them, uh, all I did was just write, I thought it was a really pleasant movie. I really liked the song. There, of course, were some choices that I would have probably done differently, but I think that with every single film I've ever watched, there's nothing that extremely horrible about this movie that I would attack the whole production team or anything. But I realized that when it comes to a simple Disney movie, we've politicized it, we've attacked it for world views, we've attached like, this is horrible for children. Like everything has been like attached to something that's just existent. If you could remove all these different things that are just nasty and connecting to it and see it as something beautiful, just a piece of art that can be viewed as good or bad, depending on your view and what you think is good and bad. But I've realized that right now, because we live in such a politically charged, super angry space, that anything that's coming up and showing up in the world right now, no matter how beautiful it is or how innocent it may be being a Disney cartoon for children, I realize that people are just in that angry mindset and just throw it out into the world. So kind of like you're spilling the cup. I feel like lately people's cups are just full of anger and hate. And like Disney was like, "Hey, we're gonna put out a movie. It's gonna be Snow
Yeah.
White." And that movie hit every cup, and like people were just pouring out this anger. And I was like, "It's a Disney movie, guys. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not this big like world changing thing. It's for kids. It's for kids to enjoy the cute little girl dancing around with animals and dwarves. Like it's not supposed to be this huge thing, but it's definitely gotten very chaotic. And I feel like even as a content creator who's been online for a very long time, even the simplest things where I can be like, here's 5 tips to make your life better, the anger that people feel towards stuff like that, I'm like, I can't. I don't want to deal with your anger. But I love the idea of like what you're pouring into your cup. It's almost like ask yourself, like, why is this what's pouring out your cup? Like, what can you adjust and what can you start doing better so that what you pour out into the world is a lot more positive? I know for me, podcasts, I've been diving into fiction books a lot more lately because the self-help and growth books felt too much like life. Life has been teaching me a lot. So I'm learning and growing there to where I find books as a way to escape just because I'm trying to fill my cup. So when people bump me, then I'm like, oh, sorry. Like, hope you have a good day instead of like, ah, F you
Yeah.
type
Well,
of moment.
well, and that's just it. You know, we talk about the film itself. You know, if you bring up as an example Snow White, this is something that's on the outside, has nothing to do with you personally. It's not affecting you personally in that moment. And most things aren't. That's what I always try to remember is that very few things are directly affecting me. And I say that meaning if I have time to worry about something, it means that it's not happening to me. You know, and then obviously not to get too much into like politics or world events, but we're living in it right now when you
Yeah.
talk about, say, and this has been going on forever, right? If you talk about a country where you're getting bombed, that's happening to you at that moment. It's very, makes sense why you would be, but you're directly dealing with it at that moment. You don't have time to worry about it.
Hmm.
When something's not directly affecting you, you can sit there and politicize it and you can over dramatize it and you can get upset about it all day long. That's a privilege, right? So getting up in arms about a film, whatever that film might be, whatever the message would be, the whole point of art is to get messages out there and get discourse going. The whole point of comedy is to call out things, right? So getting too bent out of shape or upset about it is more an indication of me and what I'm going through. And when you bring that up about people and how they respond and how they responded to you, well, you got to think about it, right? Let's think about it from a compassion standpoint. People are scared right now. People are overwhelmed. People, it's loud. Things are stacked, and that's a big thing. When one thing happens, it's not usually that big of a deal. When we get to 3, 4, 5 things happening at once, that's when we go into overload. That's when we melt down. That's when the bone breaks. That's when, the plane crashes. Malcolm Gladwell is a wonderful sociologist, and he talks about things like that, where it literally takes 4 or 5 things for a disaster to happen. If you don't get to that fourth or fifth thing, you have a chance to recalibrate to stay on the beam, right?
Hmm.
So if you think about that in terms of our lives and those different slices of life, you look at, how's your relationships? Just to backtrack, I was there, Master Co, who's a spiritual master, and I think his mentor said this as well. When it comes to worrying about all these outside things, he looked at him in the face and said, "How's your life?" At the end of the day, when I'm worried about pointing fingers at you, I have 4 pointing back at me. And it says, okay, how's my finances? How is my health? How is my job? How are my relationships? And you go through these different little buckets or slices or whatever you want to call it, and you look at each one and you say, okay, how fulfilled am I in each of these areas? If I'm not, it's time to get to work on that. If I'm focused on that, I don't have time to focus on the fact that they cast this person in this role in this movie that has nothing to do with me. Don't look
Yeah.
at it. where I focus is when I'm
Yeah.
driving is where the car is going to go. Right. So if I spend my time filling up these different areas of my life becomes fulfilled. And then again, when something happens, it's like, say you're focused solely on your job and you're really successful at work and everything's great and you don't have good relationships and you don't have, all these other things. You don't have time off and rest, whatever that might be. And then your job suddenly takes a tank, you get fired, or you're not doing well at work. Your life feels like it's the end because you don't have anything else to fall back on. But if you have all these other areas, now you have your family to go to, you have your partner, you have your comfort in your home life, you have your finances, so you're not afraid and you're not overwhelmed. And now you can take that into the world in your interactions with others, and you can maybe be of service. You know what I mean? Because it's like something else that Master Co also says is, it's hard to serve on an empty stomach. So if I'm not eating, I can't really help you. They have a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous where they say, "I'm sick, now let me help you." It's like I have to heal first. I have to take care of what's at home, and that doesn't mean in a selfish way. That means making sure that I'm okay, so that I'm serving you from an empowered place. And so when you talk about the cup and you talk about being bumped and what comes out, it's oversimplified to say that because people are go, okay, that sounds great, right? It's a good platitude, but like, how do I actually do that, right? And so
Yeah.
you look at these. That's one way to start to do that is to literally write down each area of your life and start to make action steps towards, well, how do I make that better? And that's all it is. I don't say practice makes perfect. Practice makes better.
Yeah.
And the consistency with which you practice is going to put you in a place to win when things are big. When I played sports in high school and college, and one of the things my coach used to say all the time, he drilled it into us, was that you play how you practice. And if you practice hard and you practice right, when it comes time for the game, when that big moment comes, you're going to be ready, right? So when I
Yeah.
think about my own life, and when I practice compassion and I practice coping mechanisms when things are small, when things are quiet, now when it comes to the big one, that's when I'm ready to go. Because otherwise I'm going to fall apart and melt down. And you've seen this every day. Probably experienced it. I'm, enemy number one when it comes to messing up, doing things wrong. That's how, if there's any wisdom in me, it's because I've tried everything the wrong way first. And now I
Yeah.
can tell you, okay, with definitive advice, this is the way to go. You know,
Yeah.
so and what I find that when we talk about, those different areas of life, the human condition, the way that we do things really bleeds into every other area of your life too. So me as a postural alignment therapist, I work with people on their bodies and on their posture, on their alignment, on their balance. And when you think about that, the body works the best when it's aligned, right? It loves movement and motion, which is code for change in the world, and it loves symmetry, which is another code for balance. So when I'm right and left, front to back, I'm usually pretty good to go, and nothing's going to get too far off the beam where it's going to break down.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we have to take into consideration that we are complex puzzles that are constantly learning about ourselves. And the more you pay attention to your body and what it's doing when it feels certain things, because even I was thinking like, okay, I feel a lot of anxiety doing this. And I'm like, okay, what am I also doing, like eating wise or exercise wise or sleep wise before days like this that could bring my anxiety level down? Maybe not drinking so much caffeine before I have to do something that already naturally raises my heart rate, or getting enough sleep to where my brain is clear when I'm doing something so I'm able to think on my feet. All of those types of things are really important for us to be aware of. And I was reading a book called it's something about we are what we watch. And I realized that the world around me right now is very much like a lot of the dystopian, scary films that I used to watch for entertainment. Now I'm like, you know what? I need to fill my head with some better, more positive, inspiring content, because now I don't need to see The Handmaid's Tale on TV because that's already making me feel ugh. And then when you step out into the world and you see similar things already happening, it's no longer feeling like entertainment. It's feeling like a long, drawn out, extended, chaotic feeling. And I think that when I started introducing myself to comedy, so watching funnier movies or watching stand up comedy, I started introducing myself to podcasts that have positive messages. I realized that when I am triggered by things outside in the world that are happening, that I'm able to hold and stand in that for a little bit and kind of digest it in a way that, okay, this is happening. It's not the end of the world. It's unfortunate, but these are ways that I can move forward from this information in a better way. Whereas if you're just completely filled with information where it's just got you up to like the top boiling point, then of course, yeah, every single new triggering thing that comes across your news feed or happens right in front of you is going to send you off into chaotic thoughts. So I was like, okay, what can I start to do to like make sure that when chaotic things that happen a lot more frequently now than I remember in the past are happening, what can I do to make sure that I'm a little bit here so that it boils me up to here instead of just skyrocketing like a exploding volcano.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like you got to ask yourself too, because we, again, going back to the fact that we're all in the same boat, kind of experiencing the same things, right? So why is it that some people seem to handle these same events and these same trigger points completely differently than each other? Whereas one person walks through it calmly, one person melts down and freaks out and, falls into the fetal position. And then other people sort of tune out, go full nihilist and are like, F the world, let's burn it down. Like, why are those different reactions happening at the same time to the same stimulus? Right. And again, it comes down to the story that we're telling. Fear, anxiety, and excitement are the same exact emotion in the body. It just has a different story attached, and that story is based on the focus, and that story is based on the education. So I'm like you, I'm somebody who's dealt with anxiety my entire life. I had massive anxiety growing up, and a lot of times I was taught not to show it, so I would stuff it down, which almost made it worse.
Yeah.
Right. But what I realized is that the difference between me being anxious and me being excited over something was my level of preparedness. And sometimes that's just an education on knowing yourself, or knowing, having tools
Yeah.
in order to combat something. Right, when you feel sick or you feel ill or not well, you don't go to WebMD and discover that you're dying again for the fourth time this week. Right.
Yeah.
For those watching, never go to WebMD for anything. It's an automatic death sentence. So,
Yeah.
looking at it from a different terms, but you notice people go to the doctor sometimes just for peace of mind, for someone to tell them, well, it's just this, you're going to be okay. And that settles them down. So when
Yeah.
you think about things like, we talk about the vagus nerve a lot. People talk about, the nervous system and the vagus nerve. It's all over. It's one of those things that's in social media right now, where people are putting all these videos up and all this. And again, it's a lot simpler than people are making it. It's part of this parasympathetic nervous system, which regulates, funny enough, blood flow, oxygen levels, sleep, digestion. People don't think about it for that. They think about it as the calming nerve or the excitement nerve, but it's really, it regulates all these other systems in the body. And when we think about, okay, well, how do I calm that? Well, obviously, one of those is breathing.
Mhm.
So if I were to tell you, if you were to even just do a test right now, and I was going to tell you, all right, Drummond, calm down. Like, but even if you tried to do it, try to make yourself calm right now. What immediately happened inside of you?
My brain started going, how am I going to get calm? What am I going to do that?
Which sounds anxious,
Yeah.
right? So now if I tell you, okay, just take a deep, slow breath in. Just fill your lungs up with breath, with air, expand your rib cage in your lungs, and then release it. What does that feel like?
Yeah. It definitely feel like I felt it even in my shoulders and just like my chest and stomach as well. Just
Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody has a partner and they've ever been upset and you tell them to calm down, find out really quickly how that doesn't work.
yeah,
But
yeah,
just knowing, even breathing next to someone that's upset or in a state can cause them to model you.
yeah,
I found out. So you oftentimes don't have to say anything. You just take a deep breath, calm yourself, because you'll find yourself feeding off of them, but particularly if you're close to them or if you care for them,
yeah,
right? It's gonna, that connectivity and that transference is gonna happen. So if you are able to just slow it down, and what that does is that gives you a second. It quiets things enough to now get a grasp and a hold off of whatever tools you have access to,
yeah,
right? And so then what that does is that as soon as it gets quiet enough, you can direct your focus now and say, what am I focused on? I'm not focused on calming down. I'm focused on something. And I used to do an activity with my acting students when I used to teach kids. And I used to have them stand in front of the class for 30 seconds and just, I wouldn't give them any direction. I would just have them stand there. And then I would, after the 30 seconds was up, I would ask them about their experience. And they would always talk about it. I felt nervous. I felt weird. I felt
awkward.
confused, awkward, all these things, right? And then I would go back up and I would say, all right, I want you to stand here for a minute, but I want you to count all of the dots on the wall, or I want you to count backwards from 100, or I want you to look at each person in the room and figure out what their eye color is. And then I would ask them about their experience, and they would tell me, oh, they felt like a minute went by in no time
Yeah,
because they weren't focused on themselves. They were focused on something else outside. And so that's what really kind of triggers that next step as being able to have mastery over something,
yeah,
is just directing yourself to where you want to go. But it takes, again, calming that initial reaction down first, and depending on how you practice, is how that's going to play out when things go off the rails.
yeah, yeah. One thing that I try to help people take a look at in their own life is the role that they believe they play in their life. Because I think a lot of times with the world happening and a lot of things that are out of your control, you're made to feel very helpless. And getting yourself back into, okay, the role that I play is I am a son to my mother. I am a brother to my sister. I'm a partner to my boyfriend. I like when you start to realize the power that you do have in your life, it's very interesting because for me, I've never really had that feeling of I don't have control over the outcome. I've always had this belief that I have the ability to take action, so therefore I have the ability to create change. And it may not be the perfect change, but my intentions is good. So with my actions that are pushed forward with the intention to do good in the world, I haven't experienced some of the things that people I've spoken to have felt where they feel small, insignificant, and they don't think that they have the ability to create change. But for me, I'm like, I have the ability to speak. I have the ability to show up and do things. And because of that, I a lot of times don't see myself as helpless in scenarios when things are happening. It's like, okay, something just happened. My character has to respond. How does my character respond in this? And because I have the intent of, okay, I am a character that wants the world to be a better place. So my character is going to choose an action that will make this scenario a little bit better. And when I speak to people, a lot of times they're in this mindset of, there's nothing I can do. I can't do anything. I'm just a small person. I don't have anything. But if you pull yourself up and say, I can show up for my kids, I can show up for my partner, I can show up for my coworkers. When you think of those things, because even if it's a complete stranger, I can make a complete stranger smile today. I can make five strangers smile today. Kind of like what you were saying before with the people that you ran into on the not so great rainy day. It's like you have the power. You may not have the power to influence a world leader, but you have the power to create change around you with just saying, okay, today I'm going to smile more. Something as simple as that creates change. And I think when you remember that and have the mindset of, I can go out into the world and create a difference. Don't think I'm going to end world hunger or I'm going to create world peace as your actions, but every small thing you do creates something good in the world if you choose to.
Yeah. Well, and and that's just it. You know, you said it, start where you are. And you know, creating world hunger. Maybe you will do that, but start with one meal. You know,
Yeah.
you don't save $1 million to start. You start with investing $10 or you know some small amount and build that and let it snowball. You know,
Yeah.
I wrote this book that will be hopefully published pretty soon. That one of the little lessons in there is it's called Look at Your Feet. You know, I kind of married the ideas of it's called Forget About It, the not so subtle art of Mafia Zen.
Okay.
And what it does is it marries these two aspects of my life, looking at street wisdom and the functionality of that, two seemingly disparate worlds, and the sort of Zen of Eastern philosophy, and looking at how different they look, but how similar they are, and they have a lot of the same tenets. And I used to work for this guy who was connected in the mob, and I was freaking out about something one day and worried about my rent. And this was like years ago when I was in college, and my girlfriend and I just broke up, or all this stuff was going on in my life, and I was just whining and freaking out and worried about it. And he was like, ho, stop. He said, look at your feet. And I said, okay. He says, where are you? I said, I'm here. He said, okay, well, be here. That's where you are. So be here. You can't do anything about any of that stuff right now, but you can do something about the things where you are. And he said, and put your arms out to the side. So I did. He said, turn in a circle. He said, that's what you control. So control that. Be here, control what you have within that circle, and then let everything else flow from there. You know, you got to start where you are. And it's just like you said, if you're going to influence the person next to you, and that's a great, those are some tools that you brought up based on what we were talking about before. You said that mindset of putting yourself in the form of a character and saying, what would my character do in this scenario? Right? What you're doing is you're actually being a lighthouse for other people around you. Because what do you do when you're confused and anxious, right? Who do you look for? Probably someone else as an example
Hmm.
of how do I do, if, oh, they can do it, I can do it. And that creates bravery, it creates trust, it creates connection. And so you have all of the, and if each one of us does that, imagine the web that we create. And then pretty soon we all feel safe, we all feel abundant, we all feel good in terms of groundedness, in terms of empowerment. And then it becomes very, very easy to be compassionate with other people because now we understand, right?
Yeah.
And so what I look for other people and I try to be that. And so I try to remember the same thing. Whereas if I'm not seeing the light, it's because I'm supposed to be the light.
Yeah.
And maybe it's up to me. You know, I always think about if I'm put second to last in line, it's not a slight on me. Maybe it's because I'm the one that's uniquely qualified to help the person that's last.
Yeah.
And that's why I was put there. And I'm going to find something out. There's some great benefit to being put in that position if you choose to find it and if you choose to seek it and look for it. But if I choose to sit back there and complain and bitch and, you know, be all in my own ego and think, oh, woe is me,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get nothing out of it, and the people around me are gonna get nothing out of it. And then where are we?
Yeah.
You
And
know, so
that's just
everyone
like
has power.
trickle effects into it. Like your choice to see the positive of that scenario versus you choosing to like whine and complain about that situation you're in, that creates a ripple effect of the people behind you, in front of you, and the whole journey you have going forward from there. And I think that a lot of times people don't understand how that energy transfers from person to person and how it will come back and get you later. Because if you
Oh
put
yeah,
that negative energy out, it infects the person in front of you, it infects the next person they connect with, and it just goes around. it comes back and hits you again. Um, Not from the person you gave it to, probably, but from someone else that experienced it. And if you think about it that way, you go, okay, what can I do so that there's more positive going out? So there's more positive possibly going to hit me in my back when I'm not looking. And I was watching a clip from a Drew Barrymore episode, and he was talking about thinking of yourself as a little person that you take care of every single day. And you just ask yourself, like, what does this little person need to have a good day today? And make sure that that person gets that. And it's like, okay, they need food, they need this, they need the rest. When you start thinking of yourself as a little person that just needs bare necessities to survive the day instead of focused on so much that's going on around you, you start to realize, okay, like this little person is stressed. What does that little person need? That little person might need an ice cream to cheer up. That person might need a phone call with someone that is more cheerful and positive. Maybe they need encouragement. So give them words of encouragement that let them know that they're not alone. Like when you start thinking of yourself that way, you start to kind of go, oh, I'm kind of really mean to that little person. Like, no wonder they're
100%.
having a bad day. I do not treat them very well at all.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I say this a lot to clients as well, and with my friends, especially when people are being hypercritical of themselves, or they're being mean to themselves, or they're feeling depressed, or they're feeling anxious, or whatever that might be. Treat yourself as the same way as you would your best friend. If this was your best friend, would this be the response you were giving them for what they're going through? Would this be the action step that you would help them with if that's what they were going through? And very oftentimes it's a complete
Yeah.
opposite of what you're willing to do for yourself. And sometimes I have told people, write that out on a piece of paper and put it on your mirror where you're going to see it every day if you struggle with it, so that you're reminded every time you look at it, it reminds you to treat yourself like your best friend, because that's the only relationship you spend 24/7 with. And if you think
Yeah.
about that, how closely, you know, how close is your relationship with yourself? When's the last time I write down all the things I love to do, and then I put down when's the last time I did them? And you'd be shocked at how long it's been since you've done some of the things that you love to do that make you feel good.
Yeah.
You know, even if it is eating ice cream. Like some people just, oh, I have to do this, and oh, I'm fat, and oh, this, you know, whatever their self doubt might be, they're not doing the things that are filling them up.
Yeah.
And so again, that leads to that stacking that's happening. And then when you get in those hypercritical moments, you don't stand a chance. You know, something as simple as position and posture
Yeah.
affects that in a huge way. Where they've actually done studies that correlate serotonin production and head position. So when you think about you, originally we started talking this conversation with social media and being online, and how many people's jobs are sedentary. You know what I mean? Like we sit all day long, and so our glutes shut down, our hips shut down. We go to stand up, and we have this really poor posture. People are hunched over, their heads are forward. So not only is that like putting a bowling ball on your neck all day and carrying that weight around, so that figurative but literal weight, but what's happening is you're reducing the serotonin production that happens in your brain, right? And by doing that, you're ruining your digestion, you're ruining your circulation, you're you're making yourself more anxious, more depressed just from that alone. So if you think
Mhm.
about those postures and positions, getting your head up over your shoulders is a huge way to do that. They talk about Superman pose, right? And the
Yeah.
psychological effect of that, right? So the head position is really, really important as the tool. So when you think about, oh, wow, I'm feeling depressed today, well, look at your head position first before you start looking at all of the things that are wrong in your life. Because maybe your life's not that bad. Maybe you just slump.
Yeah. It's like those Instagram things that you come across where they're like, okay, relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw, take your tongue from the top of your mouth, because that's what most people are doing. And you're like, wow, I need that to be like every other post to remind me that I'm doing that, because your body will naturally adapt to those things if that's what you're feeling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at every person has a place where they hold stress. So the next time, for you, for me, for anybody that's watching, think about the next time you get into a stressful situation of any kind. Notice immediately where your breath went. Did it become more shallow? Did it stop completely? Also notice what muscles in your body tensed up. What happened to your position? Did you close down to protect yourself? Right? Did
Mhm.
you cross your arms or cover your chest? Did you lower your shoulders? Did you drop your head? Notice all those little positions of your body and what happened then. Where are you holding tension? And then if you can remember in that moment to take a breath, release that tension, see what that does for the next moment.
Yeah.
Because anxiety attacks, just like cravings, just like anybody who has any kind of addiction, they've proven those things last less than 3 minutes at a time. Now you might need to do that in the beginning over and over again, but if you can get through that 3 minutes or less, you're going to win every time. And so just by having a couple little tools like that about checking my posture, check my breathing, that's going to affect. And again, don't discount the power of sleep. I tell people all the time, even having been a personal trainer, everyone on Instagram is a fit influencer now. They're all 20 years old. They're on every kind of supplement you can imagine. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, if you just drink enough water with electrolytes, get enough sleep, and move around a decent amount, that's a great base and a great place to start. And that's going to save you all sorts of things in your life. And that gives you a great jumping off point to then decide, okay, well, what do I love to do? Is my activity swimming? Is my activity lifting weights? What kind of foods do I like to eat? People assume that I just eat like a monk, or and I
Yeah.
and I really don't. I love pizza. I have pastries. I eat chocolate. I do all the fun things. I get burgers and fried food. I do all that, but I do it within reason. And I also supplement with all of the other things and the anti-inflammatories, the pre and probiotics. So there's a lot that goes into our lifestyles and incorporating these things little bits at a time. But you have to do that starting where you are. Don't try to change it all at once because you're going to fall flat on your face and then you're going to feel like a failure when you're not in reality.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about like where people feel distress, and I was instantly like, yeah, it's right here. Like thinking of just like driving in a thunderstorm, like the amount of times where I'm like, okay, release your shoulders, breathe, like undo all this stress that's coming up because like my body instantly, I'm super close to the wheel, I'm scrunched up, and I'm like, ooh, you gotta like get out of this because like if it's a long drive in a storm and I don't become aware of that, like I'm locked up and need like a professional like masseuse by the time I'm done because my body is just so stiff there. But I even realized from the shift from when I was working my corporate job to when I became an entrepreneur that I was having a lot less stress here, and now it was more lower back just because I do sit for in front of my computer most of the day, whereas before I kind of walked around a little bit. So it's about adjusting. And you were talking about like foods. I love like Greek foods. Like Kava is probably one of my favorite places to go.
Okay.
And we recently just decided like let's replace the food inside of our house with healthier kava type choices of food to eat instead of the other things that we were eating. And just from making those small shifts, because I really enjoy eating at kava, I consider that an experience where it's like, hey, we haven't had kava in a while, let's go get it. And I could eat it, feel full, and not like death
Yeah.
afterwards. And I was like, why are we not doing that? If we enjoy this type of food, why are we not implementing that into more of our daily spaces to substitute some of the unhealthier choices we're making? And my body has been like finding a new balance where it's like, oh, so I can feel like this all the time instead of like what I was feeling before. And it's just an experience where you kind of have to understand your body, and just being someone who shows up on social media all the time, I started paying attention to, wow, every time I drink too much dairy or have too much chocolate, my face is acne everywhere or swelling and puffy everywhere, when you start to become aware of that type of stuff, just because you monitor it more, it makes you more aware of, okay, maybe I shouldn't have as much. Maybe I'm overdoing it on this right now. Let's adjust and kind of do something different. Even waking up, saying, I'm going to drink a whole glass of water before anything else, it's life changing in your morning routine. And it's crazy how something that simple creates such a big change.
Yeah, well, and you're making conscious choices. You know, you have to ask yourself, I think in terms of agreements all the time, right? Most of the things that we do were agreements that were made without our knowledge or permission. It was all the modeling and mirroring, all the things we did growing up. You know, so you have to ask yourself, if something's not serving you, right, it was probably an agreement that you didn't make, or that you made without knowing why. And so if you ask yourself why, rather than why me, which is has every and no answer, you ask
Yeah.
yourself, well, what is the reason why I do this? Where did that come from? And if you really dig deep enough, what you're going to do is you're going to find some answers that's going to say, wow, I don't even like that. Sometimes that's not something that doesn't serve me. It doesn't make me feel good. And sometimes that'll change. Sometimes something you did when you were younger doesn't serve you now, and that's okay. And so what we do is we consciously break those agreements one at a time and then instill new ones. And
Yeah.
that's what you're doing is so just one at a time, adding something, glass of water first thing in the morning, or I'm going to go to bed, you know, by this time most nights, whatever that might be, you're able to sort of take consciously your choices as they matter to you
Yeah.
and sort of move that forward and bring that forward.
Yeah. And just the amount of time you spend scrolling on your phone can have a dramatic impact on your like mental health in a day. And I was just like, okay, since I'm back on social media now, this time I'm going to make sure that there's windows where it's just this is the time I'm going to put energy and effort onto this platform. And then from this time to this time, I will not be on my phone in that realm. And there are times where my brain goes and grabs my phone. I'm like, I gotta check my email because this person's sending me something. And then I'm like, how did I end up on Instagram again? This is not where I wanted to be. So I put it in a folder back page of my phone to make myself more aware of when I'm having to do that to get to the Instagram platform. And just by doing some of those small things, like you were saying, it just takes a little bit of time for you to go, uh-oh, I'm doing it. And then your brain can readjust and go back to where it was supposed to be going. But you just have to kind of create those things that gives you enough time to realize it's happening. And then, I mean, even when I was scrolling through social media, I was stopping on posts. I'm like, how does this post make me feel? Like, where did my mind go seeing this post? Because if you think about it, you see so many different stories, happy, sad, terrifying, like things that make you angry in such quick time. It's no wonder people's like mental health is all over the place because it's like the brain requires some time to process everything, and we're giving it like 30 different posts to navigate in that short period of time, and it's like good luck.
Yeah.
Hope
Well,
you can handle this.
for most people to be able to sit down and have an interaction like this for an hour is impossible, you
Yeah.
know? And on your Instagram, I've actually clicked out of Instagram and then immediately pressed it again. And then I went, why did I just do that? So I
Yeah.
clicked out of it to click back into it. And I'm sitting there looking at the screen going, why am I even on here? I was trying to get off.
Yep, I've done the same thing.
It's and it's wild, you know. So it's just about replacing those kind of habits with new ones, finding new tools, and really, you know, taking ownership over that. And I think that it again, it creates confidence and self-confidence, self-love, all those things they build upon themselves, and over time you end up, you know, just with an overall better life in general.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you so I have a question really quickly just about because you mentioned your posture when you're sitting and you're on in your lower back. Do you tend to sit really forward in your like with your hips forward and your shoulder you pull your shoulders back? Does that cause the lower back?
So for the longest time, I had a stool instead of something with a back support. So I was very much just lowering the stool as low as I could and trying to use the table in front of me to keep me up. But I do tend to lean forward with my shoulders forward as well.
Yeah. One of the ways you can, if you want to do a quick test if you have a base, if you make your legs hip width apart, toes facing straight forward at a 90-degree angle with your knees. And if you want to try it now, you can. And then what I have you do is I'm gonna have you slump out your lower back. So your hip, let your hip slump out like a bored teenager. And you feel how that flexion happens, that release happens in the lower back,
Hmm.
right? So now I want you to roll the hips forward to sit up all the way until you feel your ribs flare. So you'll feel that compression, that kind of icky feeling in the lower back. And then the hips are going to be feeling tight. Now just allow that to release a little bit until you feel it settle. So you're sitting up nice and tall, no rib flare, shoulders feel nice and relaxed, no effort. But think about that posture. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean this. I definitely feel like I'm not straining anything at all. I don't feel anything like pulling, which I think would probably be a lot better because, yeah, and I have the ability to sit computer right here and adjust seat to level where it doesn't require any stretching. Because, yeah, I'm definitely leaning forward like this and
Yeah.
very much so feel it in here as soon as I go forward like this.
Sure. So that stress that you hold there is going to be happening up on that upper back and the neck. It's also going to cause strain in the lower back when you get tired, so that you're going
Yeah,
to end up leaning onto that area. So when you don't have a back to a chair or you can't sit all the way back, that's a good posture to find, is just to really check the hips and then
yeah,
settle into that neutral position. And that'll give you a much firmer base with less effort to be able to sit over time. And then I obviously would recommend to get up in between, every hour or less and kind of move around a little bit, stretch out, and that'll help you sustain throughout the day. If
yeah,
obviously, if you can, you want to be able to sit all the way back into a chair to get that lumbar support and then have your shoulders be able to sit back nicely. But if you have a stool, if you have to sit forward to type a lot, which most of us do,
yeah.
that's a great place to be able to start from. And that'll help out with alleviate some of that pressure there.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that because yeah, I had a back injury where I had washed my shoes in the washer and the shoelaces got caught around the agitator and I was like going in to like unwrap the shoelaces and I twisted in a way that my body did not accept and I felt it right away. I was like, "Ooh, that hurt." And I was walking around in discomfort, but then it was just like the lightning bolts going through my spine. So I was like, okay, I need to really start taking care of my lower back because just going to the bathroom, like I'm sitting there sweating, trying to walk. And I was like, yeah, I cannot have that for an extended period of time. I remember being younger and having like a pulled muscle and it being like a day and the next day I was fine after a good night's sleep. This time it was more like a week and I was like, ooh, and they're like, it could take up to 3 months. And I'm like, ooh, can't do this for 3 months. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like, 18 years old that you roll out of bed into a split and go on about your day after having a bender the whole night before. 35, you wake up and turn the wrong way and you're suddenly it's like today's the day.
Yep, most definitely.
So it's just, yeah, finding those ways to in between to keep that movement happening, keep those good positions. And then when you go, the body that you take into the activity is going to be healthy, it's going to be strong. Um, Brian Bradley always talks about, do you want to take a $3 body or $1 million body into that activity?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so and the choice is ours.
yeah, 100%. I see that we've gotten to the end of the hour, and Instagram has been being fishy lately with just cutting lives off at the 60-minute mark. So before it cuts us off, I wanted to let you share anything that either you've got going on. I know you said you've got a book that's possibly going to be coming out into the world soon. But I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on here and doing this again. I really enjoyed the conversation. And if there's anything you would like to close with, feel free to throw it out there.
And yeah, no, again, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be able to sit down and hang out with you for a bit. Connect and kind of spread this message
Yeah.
in general. If anything, it's just a reiteration. I always tell people, in an oversimplification way, it's not that serious. And what I mean by that is we have so much going for us at any given time. And if we're willing and able to use that, we always have a chance. So on those days when you feel like it's the end, on the days when you feel overwhelmed, just reminding yourself of that, you know,
Yeah.
start where you are, believe that you're important enough to make a difference, and then everything else flows.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing note to end on. And yeah, once again, thank you. And hopefully there'll be a fourth episode in the future of us having a conversation. And I'm not sure what you're doing at the end of the month, but we are coming up to New York for a couple of days. So if you're free, let me know and we can hook up while we're up there and we can do something maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know. We'll be here.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well,
All
you
right.
have a good rest of your day and I will talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks,
Bye.
gentlemen. Bye bye.